What did you do that got you suspended from school? Two of my friends got into a fight, and I tried pulling them apart and they suspended all three of us. Jokes on them though, all we did was have 3 days to play on my, at the time, new PS2. Reminds me of the South Park Gamsphere episode. I once skipped an entire day of school in middle school. Just walked to the bus stop, waved to my mom as she drove by on her way to work, then walked back home because I had to poop before my bus arrived. I actually tried to go back to the bus but it pulled away as I came in sight of it, so I went home and played video games. My mom got a call that afternoon that I had not come to school and would be suspended if she did not excuse me for the day, despite it being the end of the day, which she didn't. When she told me I was suspended, she took me to Target to buy a new video game since I'd be home all day. I walked away from a kid that punched me. Zero tolerance policy bulls. My father was P at the school and basically said next time I'll just tell my kid to fight back if that's the case. This seems like really common in the US, and it sounds like so much BS, but can't do much more harm to that school system anyways. My algebra 2 teacher trash talked me about my homework grade even though I did as he told me to do. It was in front of the whole class, which was embarrassing. I got P and sent him an angry and nasty email. 2-day suspension. I was 18 years old, and my teacher ran into me in town on a Saturday afternoon with a cigarette in my mouth and asked me to put it out. I laughed and said no. He got so annoyed at this, he went and told the headmaster that I told him to frick off. No one believed I didn't say this, so suspended. My first insight into how easy it is for someone to lie and still cause severe consequences to me. That's insane. They can suspend you for something like that occurred off school grounds. Power tripping admins are the worst. Suspended for skipping English class to sneak into the school theater and build scenery for an upcoming show. I was a real rebel. Side note, I have had a pretty successful career building automation and scenery, and my English skills have not paid the bills, as it were. Rock on, man. During the apartheid era in South Africa, aged 16, I wrote an essay asking, where have all the black kids gone? The point was that whilst we all played soccer together in the afternoons and went surfing together on weekends, schools were race-based and there were no black kids allowed in my school. I was kicked out for having subversive tendencies. Good on you, friend. My brother got a detention slip of his framed. The reason for the detention written on the slip was, racing the belt sander. Yay, I'd probably frame that one. I hit a kid in the head with a cookie sheet in cooking class. I wasn't in that much trouble because the teacher knew it didn't hurt him and we were friends, but then when asked why I did it, I said he was being a C. Older Mormon teacher tend not to like that, so I got 2 days for it. I got stabbed in cooking class. The teacher just told me to go wash it out. Nothing happened until I got home and showed my parents. Walked out the door and all the way home because I was sick. Got a 3-day vacation to get better. Principal thought it was funny. He had to suspend me anyway though. My principal once drove me home because I had gotten sick at school. Videotaped my buddies streaking at the zoo on a class trip, then presented the video to the class as sighting of rare animals at the zoo. That is freaking amazing. I threw a pie at this one kid's face on Buy a Pie for Charity Day. Got 2 days in school. Also once for throwing an orange at the blackboard. Why I threw the orange is still beyond me. Why I threw the orange is still beyond me. There was a fly. I didn't see a fly. You were probably distracted by the orange I threw. Smoking a cigarette off school property over legal age during a spare period. Still trying to figure that one out. Even the school cop said he couldn't do anything or even confiscate my smokes because I was of legal age and not providing them to minors. Vice principal hated that he couldn't get me in deep legal crap, so he suspended me. I got in school suspension for the same thing, except it was after school 3 days of ISS, 2 weeks before graduation. Third to last day of school was in the cafeteria before first period started. They would always serve breakfast. So like every morning, I was in line to get a bacon, egg and cheese. Last person in line, about to go into the door where they made the sandwiches, when a teacher comes up and closes the door right in my face. I am literally the next person in line, and no one is behind me. Time to go to class. The appropriate response to that statement was apparently not frick you see. Suspended the last 3 days of school and started night school the next year. You're right, frick you see isn't the right response. Frick you see, I'm getting my biscuit beers. I was in science class in 11th grade and Kid A kept talking smack to Kid B. Kid A told him he was a ghetto piece of crap and he would beat his butt because he was an ROTC and was basically a marine. Freaking moron. I tell Kid A to chill because I know for a fact he'd get beat up. Didn't tell him that though. Kid B placed at state in wrestling and was always wearing local fight gym gear. We have a lot of local gyms that pro fighters train at and he's rocking one of the better gyms gear. Kid B gets fed up and open hand slaps Kid A so hard he falls out of his chair. Then he proceeds to beat the pee out of him. He literally pee himself. I break them apart and then get yelled at by the teacher for jumping him. A few minutes later campus security picks us all up and we head towards supervision. I state my case and had witnesses saying I was trying to defuse the whole thing. I end up getting a Saturday school and a 2-day suspension. Kid B gets suspended for 3 days. Kid A gets a Saturday school and transferred out of the class. I made that teacher's life heck for the rest of the semester. I told a bully that it was shitheads like him that led to incidents like Columbine. This was in early 2001. I was in 8th grade. Disciplinarian says to me, you're technically right, but we have to suspend you for this, but know that I agree with you. Holy crap. Really cool disciplinarian it sounds. For doing the Harlem Shake. My entire baseball team did one before one of our games when the fad was just starting to get popular. A few days after the video posted, the entire team was called into the principal's office one by one and was given 3-day suspensions for inappropriate behavior, because some kids were dancing shirtless and some were in sliders, and was kicked off of the varsity baseball team. They even called our parents into the office and played our video on a projector for them while laser pointing which one their son was. All the parents thought it was the biggest joke that our school decided to act this severely and demanded that the principal reduce the punishment. She didn't. The entire JV team got moved up to varsity to play the rest of our games and got creamed like 15-0 by every team they played. We were eventually allowed back on the team for the last 3 games of the season. There was so much public outrage over the whole event in my small town that the principal got fired and replaced the summer following our season. What a boner. My principal literally had the entire high school make a Harlem Shake in our gymnasium. My daughter got suspended 2 years ago in the 6th grade because some kid grabbed her chest for the 3rd time in gym and she cut loose like I told her to. The first time the gym teacher said he'd talk to him. A few days later the kid did it again. Oops squeeze. Accident my butt. I went up there and they said they'd talk with him. I pointed out that talking isn't doing anything and I wanted him to be punished for sexually assaulting my daughter. They hinted around that if I did anything outside the chain of command at this public school that she would be facing suspension and such too. I just looked at them and then looked at her and said, if he does it again, lock him and drop him. Then looked at them and said, do something or we will. A few days later I had to go up to the school. They suspended her and him. Finally, because he grabbed her and she grabbed his hand and screamed and then jumped him and pulled him down into an arm bar. She was yelling tap or snap until the teacher came up and tried to break them up. His friend ended up tapping for him. She didn't break anything. His parents were pee. He admitted to grabbing her 2 other times but they were going to suspend her for 2 weeks and him 3 days. We had a nice discussion about sexual assault and how I was going to involve the school, the gym teacher, principal and the kid and parents in litigation and call the cops anyway because frick that. It worked out eventually. She apparently wasn't his first victim. She is the only one that whooped his punk butt though. He never did come back to school after the 2 weeks. She got 2 weeks as well but I switched some things around at work and took some vacation time and I took her to Kings Island and we went to the movies quite a bit. Spent a lot of father-daughter quality time together. I tell her to this day I am proud of her. Good father right here. I stumbled across a jumper stuffed in the toilet. I proceeded to take the biggest crap. No kidding. One giant log, maybe 25-30 centimeters in thick too. On top of it. Showed me mate. Word spread. I get suspended. Jumper stuffer still has not been prosecuted. My friend's brother was in the army and brought back firecrackers from Iraq. In the UK you never ever see firecrackers. I dropped one into a crowded stairwell and by God those were some powerful firecrackers. Wow, you're lucky the Iraqi firecracker was actually just a firecracker. I was in computer class, early 2000s, and made a PowerPoint file. I then repeatedly kept copying and pasting it and reselecting all the copied files each time. My computer teacher deleted it one time but never mentioned it to me, so I just started again. I didn't even consider it at the time but I got up to 96% of the school's storage capacity before I got called down to the VP's office. One day suspension and my login to the school computers was blocked at all times except when in computer class. I had too many tater tots in my serving in middle school. 3 days in school suspension. It suited me well cause I hated class and would always rather read, so I did. Hey, Napoleon, give me some of your tots. Attempting suicide. My psychiatrists and psychologists have since said that that was the worst thing they could have done. All of my bad feelings were tied to my schoolwork in some way, so being suspended right before final exams wasn't a good move and only made things worse. That's awful. I hope you're doing better now. I didn't get fully suspended, just threatened by a teacher but I'm still pee about it. Came to school in a trench coat and weird hat for costume day during Spirit Week. Was supposed to be Inspector Gadget on a budget. Some kid asked if I was supposed to be a child diddler because, well it did kinda look like a creepy guy costume. I said you're sure. Teacher overheard and made me write an apology letter to pedos for making fun of them. I said something along the lines of no, I'm not writing that because I'm not sorry. What should I be sorry for? Sorry they are horrible people? Why? You support them. Finally wrote the letter and it was just sarcasm apologizing for how tough it must be scar so many children. Seems like a lot of hard work, etc. She threatened suspension and our principal defended me. Frick you Mrs. M and your droopy old lady neck. That is not the direction I expected that to go in. Fold paper boats. Now this wasn't a small amount of boats. I folded about 400 boats and put them in the principal's office. I went into the women's bathroom in the teacher's lounge. They had soft lighting in there so it wasn't super bright. I put clear soap all over the toilet seat and walked away. Figured someone would sit down and get covered in soap and it'd be worth a chuckle. The principal happened to be the one to use it next. She slipped off, got a nasty bruise on her hip and ripped her clothes. Was called over the intercom with swears and got yelled at once I got into the office. Another teacher saw me near the area and assumed it was me. Suspended for 4 days. Principal got a talking to for the way she freaked out on me. At least you did it on principle. Bullies were holding me down and hitting me. I got free and broke 2 of their noses. Got 1 day out of school and 4 days in school suspension but they never fricked with me again. I'm proud of you Mr. You Tank Ninja 1. INB for typical ask Reddit answer not me, but suspension isn't really a thing where I'm from, but my class was a little worse than the school for these kinds of things. Here's a list of only the major stuff we did, some of which actually had big repercussions. Note, none of them with teachers in the room. Throwing darts in class before the teacher came and one guy decided to throw the broom handle forward towards the blackboard, shattering it. Broke numerous lights and windows from playing indoor football, soccer, with a tiny ball. Not once did any of us actually take the fall and or pay for them. Had only one actual cabinet in our classroom, which got taken away after we stored a sound system in there and kept playing it loudly during breaks, then locked the cabinet each class. Actually me and a classmate brought fast food in class for our birthday and it evolved into a foot fight, which devolved into someone throwing a goddamn subwoofer and barely missing someone's face. Did leave a hole in the wall though. We were cold once and brought rubbing alcohol to school and set it on fire on a rock. We were sitting in front of the campfire and somehow the bottle shot a literal fireball, causing mass hysteria and 2 kids going to the hospital with minor burns. This actually got the principal and school counselor involved, cause none of us snitched. Did the thing from the Captain Underpants books where you put ketchup packets under the toilet seats in the bathroom so they explode all over when someone sits down. I thought it was funny, administration didn't. Squishies were hilarious. Took a large block of hash from Ireland with us over to our school skiing trip in Italy. Two of my mates proceeded to projectile vomit all over the dinner table. Thanks for serving veal covered in 1/2 inch of fat. I didn't get sick, so had to be kept up overnight by a doctor who was flown up the mountain to us. We were sent home the next day, of which, because I got high, was sang by my mother and younger brother the whole ride home from the airport. 2/10 would not recommend. You have some cool parents. Most memorable time. The exams had finished for the term. The teacher decided to give us some maths work to fill in time until the term was over. I really didn't see the point, as it did nothing for our grades. So I decided to talk to my friends. Well, the teacher said, "You Eknum, I'd like to see you doing your work, please." Petulant teenage me responded with, "I'd like to see you stick your head up your ass, but it's not going to happen." And thus began the legend of the student who told a teacher to wear their butt as a hat. Set a deodorant can on fire. Then me and my mate sprayed it with another deodorant can until it exploded, sending shrapnel everywhere. This is a suicide bomber right here, everyone. Brought firecrackers to school and blew them up in the open outdoor area during break. Luckily this was 1981ish, so I only got suspended for a couple days instead of being arrested as a terrorist. I didn't know it at the time because I was in 5th grade, but this happened a week after Columbine. I brought a cap gun to school, and after everyone went home, I went with a friend to the bathroom during an after-school art class so I could show him my new cap gun. I held it out the bathroom and pulled the trigger a few times. What I also didn't know was that outside the window was where the buses were still loading with students. I saw someone run by and booked it out of the bathroom. A few minutes later, the principal ran into the art room, where my friend immediately ratted me out. I was suspended for 2 days. Friend stole a bag of goldfish in 3rd grade and ran out of the cafeteria without. Then 30 minutes later they found me and I got a 2-day suspension. I was dating an intern, studying to be teacher, in my final year, and I was a date at the teacher's dance. We got some horrified and amused looks, especially since I was already serving a week's suspension at the time for getting sent out of class too many times. I didn't get suspension, as school was almost over and only final exams were left. She got a stern talk from the principal. To clarify, I was 18. She was 22. I know it all sounds like a Arthathapin story, but I swear that happened. Arthat probably actually did happen, but I'm not gonna. Pete and I had been arguing. We never got on really. In a boarding school environment, those little disagreements can spiral very quickly. Anyway, Pete cut in front of me in the lunch queue because Pete was a troll before the word troll existed. When I tried to get back in front, he shoved me. So I, in my angry teenage state, picked up my wooden lunch tray and swung it into his head, splitting his scalp and sending a spray of blood all over the food while he slumped to the floor. I then casually walked out, went back to my room and had a pot noodle while I waited for the inevitable shitstorm. Shitstorm ensued. Headmaster tried to expel me, but then realized that expelling a kid for standing up for himself might result in him being fired in a school with such a strong anti-bullying policy. So I had a week at home, where my dad told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself. I got back at the same time as Pete, who had spent 2 days in a hospital and the rest in the infirmary. We still didn't get on, but he stopped being a prick to me. My friend brought the manual for Keep Talking and Nobody Explode. Some kid saw it in his bag. School didn't care, it was just a manual for some game he was going to play after school with friends. Dickhead administrators. I love that game. I was from the wrong side of the tracks. With the help of another teacher, I proved my 9th grade English teacher was flunking me on purpose. I would show my other Spanish 1 teacher the work I did. He would initial it. I would turn it in. Grade time would come. I would have zeros for the work. Instead of acting rationally and letting him take care of it, I proceeded to her classroom and picked up a desk, threw it at her. That was my last day of school. Got a GED, then went on to college. This was in 1990. I am not quite so irrational anymore. I got suspended for the white-collar crime of poor academic integrity. I cheated. Quizzes in my class were pulled straight from an online bank. Started the year by studying, then memorizing the quiz at home, then cramming right before the quiz with it. To bam. Caught using it during the quiz. I was told that I wouldn't be able to get into college with this kind of thing on my record, and certainly wouldn't be able to get into my specialized field of study, told this by my HS, and also by my college during visitation day, as here are the only things that are a definite no-go for application considerations. I am now 10 years from HS and more than 5 years into my post-collegiate career, still waiting for it to catch up, I guess. Some dude was smoking cigs outside near the loading docks. I did something unrelated to get 5 days of in-school suspension, ISS, which I got a lot of, and it is just sitting in a room all day doing mindless work, getting treated like garbage by this horrible woman. Vice principal said he thought the guy smoking cigs by the loading docks was me. I asked if the penalty of smoking cigs outside was out of school suspension. It was. I confessed to be the guy smoking cigs outside. The guy smoking cigs by the loading docks was someone I knew. I gave him the cigs to go lol. Got my friend out of trouble. Missed out of being treated like trash in a room at school. Had 5 days of playing Halo 3 and waking up at noon. I won. I got sent to alternative school for having tools in a toolbox in my truck. Long story short, I had a big lifted truck me and my dad built for overlanding. Faculty told me frequently they thought it was an eyesore. Faculty always called me into the office to search my truck for drugs. I was pretty straight edge then and had nothing to worry about, so gave them the go ahead. They didn't find crap except a toolbox locked in the bed of my truck. They claim the tools inside can be used as a weapon and are prohibited to be in my possession on school property. I advise the faculty I'm driving around a 70s era Chevy truck that weighs roughly 3 tons and that in and of itself is a weapon. They escort me off campus. Outside of some bad grades here and there, I never had any disciplinary issues in school, so for them to throw the book at me over some screwdrivers and wrenches made me lose faith in the system. At cross-country practice, my brother and some other upperclassmen put a couple freshmen's water bottles on a mattress and set said mattress over a 6-inch deep pond. They all got suspended for 2 weeks, banned from prom, homecoming, etc., banned from ever playing school sports again, and received a level 3 referral that is guaranteed to make applying for college a whole lot harder. Back in my day, the seniors superglued a freshman's eyelids shut and the only punishment was a couple hill sprints. Got expelled 2nd week of 8th grade because the D-bag bully with the locker next to mine close fist hit his girlfriend in the face. They were arguing. I told him that wasn't cool, so he asked what I was going to do about it. I snapped and ended up smashing his face into the locker and breaking his nose. I was expelled because I would not apologize for fighting. You can bully me all you want, but frick you if you're going to hit someone 50 pounds lighter than you that you care about. Had a teacher who hated the word suck. One day someone used it, and she raised her voice, saying something like, "Next person who uses the word suck, it'll take you out in the hall and tell you why it's such a bad word." I said without thinking, "At least you won't show us." I got my first and only ISS. I told the vice principal that it was bulls that I had to take an additional math class, essentially remedial math, despite having an A in the math class I was currently in, before I was allowed to take trig and pre-calc. This basically meant that I was unable to take AP Calc in high school. Basically, the school put too many freshmen into more advanced math courses meant for sophomores and juniors, but after a while they realized a lot of the freshmen weren't retaining the material well enough. So they took some course meant for seniors to sleep skip while still taking a math class as a requirement, and required students to take it before moving on to pre-calc. So if you were a freshman or sophomore, this meant you just took another course before AP Calc. If you were a junior like me, it meant that you wouldn't be able to take AP Calc before you graduated. So I was suspended for the rest of the day and I played COD 4. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.